Welcome back to Fundamentals of Live Production. In this lesson, we're going to build a camera from the ground up, showing a variety of build scenarios. So let's start with the most basic setup, and that would be off of a just standard tripod that doesn't even have a quick release mount. So this is just a square mount that goes into the base here. So I'll show you this on the camera here. So it's just a square mount. And the problem with this kind of mount here, although it works great for a lightweight camera, is that there's no back and forth adjustment. There's no adjustment for balance of the camera. So that's where an adjustment plate like this can come in, a quick release adjustment plate. So I've just taken the regular plate here, and I'm gonna insert it into the base here. And now what this will give me is, on a small, lighter camera configuration, I can just slide this plate in, and now I've captured the camera. So it can move back and forth, and I can adjust for some balance now and get this camera, get the center of gravity more over, and just locking it down. I can get the center of gravity more over the center of the tripod head, so I don't have all this weight extending from the forward. Now, to get a perfect balance, it's not going to be perfect with this plate. It's just simply not long enough. So I could either, basically I need to get a longer plate to make this work, but I could work with this if I had to. It's not perfect, but add a little friction to it. It's not a perfectly balanced camera, but as long as someone's manning it, this could work. So you need to be able to offset the camera to be able to get that balance to work. So I'm gonna snap this out, put it back on the table, get rid of this tripod here, and now we're gonna work on a little bigger builds. So the problem with a build like I just showed you is this is a 24-70. It's a 24-105 actually, and this is a great lens for a wide to medium shot. It's not gonna get you a tight shot of your pastor, it's not gonna get you a tight shot of the worship band. It's just a little too wide. It's a little too light of a lens. Realistically, kind of that main center shot is gonna be off something more like this. This is a 70-200, 2.8, and it's a heavier lens. So instead of mounting the camera on putting the plate on the camera itself, in this build, we're gonna do a build on the lens collar. So the idea of this is that I'm just moving that center of gravity further forward so I can hang the camera off the back. And the idea of hanging the camera off the back is kind of interesting. It works on the idea that if the lens weighs more than the camera, we should support the lens and not the camera. It'll put less stress on the lens mount itself. So that's why we're doing it this way. We're gonna take the same thing. This tripod head has a quick release standard Manfrotto plate in there. I'm just gonna take the plate and slide it in. Lock that down, and now I'm just gonna add the camera. Doesn't do any point to really adjust it at this point. It's still captured in there. I've got a much larger range of motion on it, but I'm gonna kind of guess that it needs to be somewhere here in the middle. Lock that down, lock the tilt. I'm gonna add the camera body on. So lining up the dots on the lens. And now let's see if we can get this guy balanced. So I'm gonna release it, it's back heavy, but I have all this play, I can push the whole rig forward now. Let's see how that goes. And there we go, I've got a properly balanced and counterbalanced lens. So this is again putting the shoe or sliding plate underneath the lens instead of the camera. The larger the lens gets, supporting the lens makes more sense than supporting the camera body. All right, so I'm gonna lock this down again. And now in this final rig, we're gonna go for the big guy. So same idea, I've got a Blackmagic camera here, but this one has the battery grip on it. And I'm gonna take this base and I'm gonna slide it in. And what you'll notice immediately is that it's a taller build. And there's a little more flex in the whole system, just because of the height of the deal. All right, so if I take the lens here and try to support it, this is a big, heavy lens. This is, I haven't weighed it. It probably is 8 to 10 pounds. I mean, it's more than that. It's a big, heavy lens. So I'm gonna put this on here, and immediately we'll see we have a problem. So I'm gonna line this up, and I put this nice lens. It's gonna give me some really nice telephoto shots on there. Look at this, it's really gonna beat that mount up. You don't want this hanging off the camera. I'm not even gonna let go. It is a really big, heavy mount, and it's introducing all this jiggle into the system. And even if you were able to have this supported, it really wouldn't be a great idea to shoot with this because it's going to jiggle a ton when you're zoomed in and you're going to have unstable shots. So we're going to build up a bigger mount on this so that we can get stable shots that don't damage the camera and give you better looking results. So I'm going to take this lens off, and instead of mounting the camera or the plate directly to the camera, I'm going to take this off, and instead we're going to add in a shoulder plate rig. So I've taken the plate that belongs on the tripod and just screwed it right to the bottom of this. This is just a two-part system. This is based on the old broadcast systems, Sony's VCT plate, and basically it's just a quick release plate so that camera operators could go from a tripod mounted position to a shoulder mounted configuration in a short amount of time. So instead of having to screw or unscrew things, the plate would go on the tripod like this, and then the camera would be built on this, which just slides in. So there's a release here, and triangle here, lines up with the triangle here, just goes on. And there's a catch on the front, there's a catch on the back, click, and now I have a really solid foundation for the camera itself. And we have a lot of adjustment layer. So we can move the same amount of distance that we had before, plus there's a slot on the top that's going to give me another 160 centimeters of movement. So let's look at that here. I'm going to take that plate that I had before, slide it in, and now I can start getting the camera really where it needs to be. It needs to be way back here with the weight of that big lens up front to get everything to balance properly. The other thing that's on here is lens support rods. These are carbon fiber rods. They could be aluminum, doesn't matter. These are really cheap on Amazon. They're a couple bucks a piece. But they're very strong and very supportive. So this whole base allows me to take that weight of the lens, and instead of supporting it on the camera mount, we could do that, but that it still wants to tip forward. It's still, that center of gravity is way up here. So this whole system supports the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is, I know that the height of this lens, I've just kind of measured it out, is too high with this battery grip on here. So I don't just need rods, I also need to raise the rods so that the lens support can hit the bottom of the lens here. So before I add on the lens itself, I have a lens support here and just a small little riser. This riser will go on and slide it into position. This might need a little fine tuning back and forth, but the idea is that I'm just raising up these rods. It's still very, very stiff, very strong. Now I'm going to take this lens here, line up the dots on the mount, and click it in. Now the support is too far back, and there's a couple different ways I could adjust it, but I'm just going to move the camera plate itself forward until that lens is properly supported. So I'm supporting all the way at the end because that's where I minimize the most leverage on the lens. If I support it in the middle, that's good, but then I've got these moving parts that I've got to get around. So I might as well support it as far from the lens as possible. That way I've got support on both ends of the camera here. So now we're going to figure out balance. This is properly supported. I can operate the lens. It's not going to shake at all anymore. It's really solid. The whole thing is really solid. But now let's see how we're doing on balance. And we got some work to do. So we are way too far forward front weighted. And instead of moving the camera in all pieces back, let's try moving this bottom plate first. So take the bottom plate and slide it back as far as I can go. Check our balance again. And it wants to fall both directions. So let me turn up the counterbalance on here and see how it's doing. So I've turned up the counterbalance all the way, and now it's holding position great. It wants to fall back a little bit. I normally wouldn't have a real high tilt during a church service, most likely, but maybe I want to get a shot of the lights and come back down on it. So I do want to make sure that I can balance both directions. So the way I'll achieve that is I can't move the plate any further back. So now I actually need to move the whole camera rig on the top plate forward a little bit. So I'm going to loosen the top plate here that the camera's attached to and slide it forward, supporting the lens. Locking that down. Now I'm just going to move this lens support to support the lens as well. So I'm going to just move this out. Okay, now we got some wiggle room now. So I'm going to loosen that up. I have more weight up front. Still holding there. Still holding there. Let's see if we can adjust that just once more. And just give it a little fluid balance here, fluid resistance. And I've got a properly rigged system. So in review, that's how we balance any camera system, from small, medium to large. Every camera needs to be balanced, counterbalanced, and supported properly for best results.